We are kicking things off with the weather, and we got an early glimpse of Old Man Winter with the cold and snow definitely causing some disruptions earlier this week. Market Journal's Maddie McIntosh spoke with Nebraska Extension Ag Climatologist Al Dutcher to get some insight on what producers can expect for this winter and how agriculture might be affected.
As we've seen in the past few weeks, the temperatures have been a mix of both high and low with varying amounts of precipitation. Nebraska Extension Ag Climatologist Al Dutcher says this is actually a positive weather pattern, but overall we need more.
The problem is we're not getting enough of them, and most of these have been moving to the east as we've been dealing with that ridging pattern. And that's simply because we're under a La Nina influence, and it's a very common pattern. I've talked to people during the last winter when I thought this event was going to materialize. I said probably expect a dry, warmer harvest period. We've been fairly close to that prediction. But when it does break down and we get these stormy periods, of course, you're going to get these bitter Arctic influences. And the biggest issue going forward is how long will that ridge remain in place and how much Arctic air will we get into our region? And I think that's going to be our big unknown solution. As the upper air low in the eastern Aleutian Islands starts to work its way eastward, during the second half of the winter is what I suspect will happen. It'll start to push that ridge to the east. That'll allow more energy to come into the northwestern United States, and most likely we'll see some more of that energy dig down into the central Rockies. We'll start to see a more normalized winter pattern. We don't have any subsoil moisture to speak of, and we're going to have to rebuild that. So even though we're getting these big precipitation events, or it looks like we're getting big precipitation events, remember, it's the liquid equivalent moisture that we're worried about, and there's really not a lot of room to catch up. To catch up now from what we missed from this fall is going to require a pretty nasty winter.
The wildfires out west have had an impact on Midwest weather as well, but Al says the end of November should bring some relief.
I think that we've seen most of our major impacts. You know, a lot of it's been the low level and mid level and high level smoke that's been coming over. You know, we've had days where at high level we blocked the sun during the last hour or two of the evening and in the first hour or two of the morning. Western Nebraska's had more closer to those big fires in Colorado and Wyoming. They have to deal with a lot more lower level smoke. It's west of the Continental Divide where there's less snow, and this system here is really pushing most of it on the east of the Continental Divide. Until we get a big storm system coming into central northern California and dumping copious amounts of rainfall all the way through the Great Basin into western Colorado, we're likely to deal with wildfire issues all the way into probably the end of November. So as long as we get occasional storm that we can dump 2 or 3 inches of moisture in across a broad area, that'll put things out. But until then, we're probably going to see continuation of these major wildfires, particularly the closer you get to the Pacific Ocean.
While this winter looks to have some moisture, Al says we need more frequent events in order to preserve the topsoil, and the northern snowpack could be a major predictor.
We need to see some regularity to these events so that we can feel comfortable that as we go through the tail half of the winter and start getting to the spring season, that we would expect those events to continue and bring up more Gulf moisture into our region as the air temperatures start to warm. The western half of the state is going to be really dictated by snowpack. We not only need to see a normal snowpack, we need to see it much above normal. If we do not have snowfall at the lower elevations like we did last winter, it was all up high, then when we melt, we lose some of that in the lower elevations to infiltration. It doesn't get into the stream flows. And the biggest issue in whether or not that is going to happen, and there's high evidence of this, and NOAA's done a good research on this, snow impacts during La Nina years, is to watch the Dakotas in southern Canada. If we develop a big snowpack there as we go into late November and early December, the most likely scenario is that's going to reinforce Arctic air surges and make it more intense. And those are what we would be more concerned about. So I see that as our major issue going forward. So that snowpack is going to be key. If it doesn't develop, the odds are that we will have a more benign winter. But if that snowpack develops up there, and there's signs of it with these last storm systems, then likely we're going to have a really rough first half of the winter.
Reporting for Market Journal, I'm Maddie McIntosh.